Welcome to my first Clamp Characters History video. In this video we'll be covering Clow Reed and Yuko Ichihara, their respective histories and relationships to each other, along with how they are integral to the plots of Cardcaptor Sakura, XxxHOLiC, and Tsubasa RESERVoir CHRoNiCLE. Clow Reed was born sometime between March 1638 and the year 1774. His father was British and his mother was Chinese. Both were magicians who used different forms of magic. Clow's mother, especially powerful herself, her family was the Li family, a line of magicians famous throughout China. They eventually moved to Hong Kong sometime before 1984. The most notable members now are Yelan Li, the head of the Li family, and her children, the quadruplets Furie, Shewa, Huanglan, and Feme, and the youngest and heir, Xiaoran. In the anime, there is also Xiaoran Li's cousin, Mei Ling. Meanwhile, nothing more is known about Clow's father's side. During Clow's lifetime, he became an extraordinarily powerful magician, the most powerful in the world, to the point where he could create his own forms of magic. According to Kiro, pretty much anyone can use old-school magic if one follows the recipe, otherwise instructions. But only a few magicians can create entirely new magic. Clow's original magic was a mixture of his father's Western magic and his mother's Eastern magic. This is seen in his magic circle, which contains both English and Chinese characters. Furthermore, Clow created the Clow cards using this magic, also incorporating elemental hierarchies such as light over earth and fire, and dark over water and wind, along with the 5 Chinese elements and how each reacts to one another. Each of the 19 cards, 53 in the anime, is alive. Each is imbued with a soul, and each can perform unique magic corresponding to each's name. The light, the glow, the shadow, the earthy, the flower, the maze, the mirror, the shield, the fiery, the sword, the thunder, the dark, the erase, the illusion, the watery, the wood, the windy, the fly, and the jump. According to the anime, each card is very willful and independent, and no normal force can stand up to them. Still, these cards love their master and fully obey the one who seals them in card form and writes one's own name on the cards. Furthermore, these cards depend on their master's magic for sustenance, lest they become ordinary cards. To store these cards, this incredible magic, Clow made the Clow Book, along with 2 Guardians of the Seal to protect the cards. Note as well, on the back of the front cover, Clow wrote, "When the magic of this book is released, a great disaster will befall the world." Also, the pages are cut out in the center to provide a space to store the cards. Now, regarding the twin guardians, they were named Kerberos, nicknamed Kiro, and Yue. Similar to the Clow cards, both Kerberos and Yue were imbued with their own souls and could act independently, though they remained loyal to their master. When not manifesting in physical form, these guardians would attach themselves to the front and back covers of the Clow Book. Although they are supposed to watch over the book, they can fall asleep in this form. Clow made these guardians each with different forms of magic. Kerberos was made using the symbol of the sun, meaning he can shine on his own, supplementing himself with the ability to eat in both his true form, along a large winged lion, and his borrowed form, a winged stuffed animal. Meanwhile, Yue was created using the symbol of the moon, meaning he can only reflect light. He cannot generate his own magic or sustain his own existence. He relies on his master to sustain him through that person's magic. As such, in his true form, resembling an angel, he cannot eat or drink, and even though his borrowed form, a human appearance named Yukido Tsukishiro, can eat, it provides no energy. Although we do not know if Clow was born in Britain or China, we do know that he kept in contact with his mother's family. During his lifetime, Clow wrote several tomes which he gave to the Li family. One, which Xiaoran Li cited, said, "Evil will befall the world when all of the Clow card seals are broken. I hope with all my heart that that day never comes." Meanwhile, in all these writings, Clow never describes Yue in detail, thereby keeping Yue's identity a secret and purpose a secret until the Day of Judgment. Clow also created a magic compass board which could locate and even store the Clow cards. He gave this to the Li family, and it would later be used by Xiaoran Li, even serving as the basis for Xiaoran Li's own magic circle. This was also the magic circle for his mother in the anime. Clow also made a magic bell, imbued with the power of the moon, which he left in the care of the Tsukimine Shrine in Tomoeda, Japan. There it awaited a person with a little magic power to see its true potential. This was Kaho Mizuki, who knew the bell's purpose upon touching it, and who later used the bell to help Sakura Kinomoto in the final judgment. Regarding Clow's occupation, he worked as a fortune teller. As a result of his incredible magic powers, he had the ability to see the future with great detail. As such, whenever he told someone's future, it was always incredibly accurate. While we do not know exactly how many types of fortune-telling he did, we do know that one type was using the Clow cards themselves. According to Kiro, a minimum of 9 out of the 19 cards are required for a simple fortune. According to the anime, Clow's fortune-telling days eventually took him to Hong Kong sometime long before 1935. This was a time before the high-rises were built. Here his popularity crippled a local sorceress's fortune-telling business. This sorceress, known in Japanese only as Madoshi, meaning simply sorceress, used water to tell fortunes. After Clow unintentionally started taking all her business away, she constantly challenged him to fights, presumably magic fights, hoping to defeat him and reclaim his superiority. Nonetheless, the two's relationship was complicated, as Clow held no ill will toward her, even giving her a headdress as a birthday present, which she wore ever since. Clow eventually moved away to Japan, but the sorceress hung on to her feelings of hatred for Clow and kept her consciousness alive long after death, all the while calling out to Clow using magic in the hopes of luring him back and trapping him in a magic book forever. It is revealed at her final defeat in the Cardcaptor movie that she actually appeared to love Clow, wanting to lure him back to tell him so, but had gotten lost in her hatred along the way. After Clow's days in Hong Kong, he moved to Japan, spending a considerable amount of time in Osaka, where Kiro learned to speak Japanese and so gained an Osaka accent, before moving closer to Tokyo in the town of Tomoeda, likely sometime in the 1900s. During his time in Tomoeda/Tokyo, he met another fortune-teller and wish-granter named Yuko Ichihara, although her real name is unknown as she always used an alias as a protective ward against possible enemies, and the two remained friends for decades until Clow's death. Yuko's past is shrouded in mystery. Nothing is known about her origin, her upbringing, or any of her life before she met Clow Reed. Presumably, she operated a small fortune-telling business, not unlike Abachan's, the old fortune-teller in HOLiC, where Yuko may have also granted wishes in exchange for exact compensation, something of equivalence to the wish, for example, one's most prized possession in exchange for a life-changing wish. Yuko specialized in numerous forms of fortune-telling, not just the standard palm readings and horoscopes, but even physiognomy, the reading of changes in the person's body, for example one's face, and also magic forms of fortune-telling. Clow and Yuko grew close to each other over the years. According to the HOLiC A Midsummer Night's Dream movie, Yuko hints at once being in love and or having suffered a broken heart or problematic relationship, but this is never elaborated upon if it was with Clow or someone else. Nonetheless, Clow loved Yuko, to what extent is unknown, whether as close friends or romantically, and was extremely saddened when the day of her death came. Yet Clow's magic was so powerful that as Yuko closed her eyes for the last time, he had a thought. I want her to open her eyes one more time. His magic then stopped Yuko's time at the brink of death, causing her to remain alive indefinitely. In this moment as well, Fei Wong Reed was created as a manifestation of Clow's desire for Yuko to stay alive. During Clow and Yuko's extended time together, the two collaborated on several projects, including researching and learning how to create new worlds and how to travel dimensions. This collaboration was Yuko's first realization that there were more worlds/dimensions beyond the one she lived in. In this event, Clow and Yuko traveled to the Magic Knight Rayearth dimension, and note this is a sub-dimension of Angelic Layer as the book series is read by the characters, hence fictional books and shows are actually real other dimensions, which Yuko herself explained in HOLiC. They traveled to this dimension in the hopes of researching how to create new worlds. There, on a snowy day, they met Mokona, the god of that dimension who created Earth, Sephiroth, Arozam, Faran, Chizeta, and any other worlds in that dimension. Based on this original Mokona, though how long after meeting the original Mokona is unclear, Clow and Yuko created the twins Mokona-Modoki, Modoki meaning same but different, specifically for the future seen in the HOLiC and Tsubasa storylines. These twins were given the names Soel for white Mokona and Larg for black Mokona, along with special earring jewels, a red one with the ability to boost magical power for Soel, and a blue one with the ability to seal magical power for Larg. Sometime before or immediately around the time of the Mokona's creation, Yuko's shop was created, and she moved her business to it, including all her collected treasure, into the storehouse. Clow had foreseen the future, including the future of the Clow cards, the future of his descendants' children, the future of different dimensions, and above all, the future where Fei Wong's plan of chaos broke the laws of time and space. Hence, the shop was created as a separate dimension, but one tied to the current dimension. The knowledge of how to create such dimensions was potentially gained from studying the original Mokona and other dimensions. Yuko also created Marodashi and Morodashi, two young girls without souls who would maintain the shop's existence through magic, but also help out Yuko day to day. Yuko would, from then on out, conduct her business from the shop, granting the wishes of anyone who came in. Only those in need of a wish granted could even see the shop, and keeping herself alive as payment for the future reincarnation of the Sakura clone in Tsubasa RESERVoir CHRoNiCLE. The Mokona-Modoki themselves were created either during or slightly before the last year of Clow's life, potentially in the winter of 1982 to 1983. During this year together with the Mokona, Clow and Yuko taught them many things about the world and magic, and especially about the Mokona's own powers, such as communicating with each other no matter the distance, including through other dimensions, transporting matter through themselves, and their abilities such as supersuction power. During this last year of Clow's life, he occasionally imparted life lessons to the Mokona, including how there were many meetings and partings in the world, foreshadowing his death and the Mokona's separation and future journeys. During the middle of spring, possibly in 1984, after the cherry blossoms had bloomed, the Mokona fell asleep and was stored in Yuko's shop until the day they reawakened to start their journeys. Once asleep, Clow had his final conversation with Yuko, apologizing for his many requests of her over the years, and saying that he was thankful to have met her, and that he was truly happy being with her. His last words to her were then, "The dream must end," referring to the dream of keeping her alive. Clow then returned to his home in Tomoeda, where, on a snowy day, he said his farewells to Kerberos and Yue, designating Yue as the judge of who will become the next master of the Clow cards, and designated Kerberos to choose the next candidate for master. Clow said to them that all living things must come to an end, despite their insistence that he shouldn't die, especially since he showed no sign of weakening despite being hundreds of years old. Right before his death, though, Clow implanted false memories of the scene to the two, making them believe they nursed him during his final moments when he, in actuality, sealed both in the Clow book. Clow then died, immediately reincarnating himself into two people, Eriol Hiragazawa and Fujitaka Kinomoto, both starting their lives at approximately ages 11 to 13. Clow also then, at the time of his death, scattered the Clow cards, aside from the Light, who decided to remain in the book, throughout Tomoeda to await the next master. Little is known about Fujitaka's early years. He said himself that he had no memory of where he was born, presumably because he began life between the ages of 11 to 13, though he did grow up in Tomoeda, and Fujitaka also mentions that, at least at age 44 when he said this, he had no living relatives. He eventually grew up to be a high school teacher by age 25, and married one of his students, Nadeshiko Amamiya, when she was 16. 1 year later, they had their first child, Toya, and 7 years after that, they had their second child, Sakura. 3 years later, Nadeshiko died at the age of 27. Sometime before the age of 43, Fujitaka gained a position as an archaeology professor at Toei University. When Fujitaka was 43, his daughter Sakura began her journey as a card captor, while he himself remained unaware of her exact predicament, until his other half, Eriol, explained later on. Meanwhile, Eriol lived out his life in England, remaining in an 11-year-old form so that 30 to 32 years later, he could join Sakura Kinomoto's 5th grade class and help her transform the Clow cards into Sakura cards. While Fujitaka had lost all memory of his past life as Clow and lacked any magic power, Eriol inherited Clow's memories and magic. While Eriol waited in England, he met Kaho Mizuki while she was studying abroad. The two fell in love, and Kaho would return to Tomoeda to teach Sakura's 4th grade class and give her the bell Clow left to her family in the Tsukumine Shrine. This bell allowed Sakura to have a second chance on the final judgment, where she had to fight Yue and prove herself master of the Clow. If Sakura failed, then the cards and all those who came in contact with them would forget the feelings they had for the one each loved most. The bell helped by transforming her wand into the Star Staff and giving her enough moon magic to use Windy, a card under Yue's moon power, to defeat Yue without hurting him. Kaho later returned to England as Eriol moved to Tomoeda. And Eriol then brought along his 2 companions, which he created, just as Clow had created Kobus and Yue. These 2 companions were Spinel Sun, or, if you prefer, Spinner in the original dub, and Ruby Moon. The former appeared as a black panther in his true form and a stuffed animal cat in his borrowed form, and the latter appeared as a butterfly-like humanoid in her true form and a human in her borrowed form, this human named Nakaru Akizuki. Eriol said that they completed him in a way, and serve as a symbol that Clow has passed on. After assisting Sakura through trickery, and transforming the Clow cards into Sakura cards, he revealed that to do so, she had to be more powerful than Clow Reed. He then asked her to use her magic to cast a spell on him and Fujitaka. This spell split Eriol's magic between the two, making him no longer the most powerful magician in the world, a role he regretted ever since he, as Clow, stopped Yuko's time, and because his constant knowledge of the future made nothing a surprise. This magic transfer also allowed Fujitaka to see the ghost of Nadeshiko. Eriol then moved back to England with his beloved Kaho, and continued from afar to assist Sakura into the Clear Card arc, which is currently ongoing. As the years passed, Yuko continued her business in her shop, making several acquaintances in both the human world, Nengenkai, such as other shopkeepers and the old fortune teller, and in other dimensions including the connected otherworld Ikai, the Hanshin Republic, and Infinity, meeting people like Akari, the Catwoman, Soeta Arasugawa and his wife Arashi, and Eagle Vision. Yuko's work would eventually cause her to cross paths with Sakura Kinomoto and Shaoran Lee's son, Tsubasa Lee, who she sent to Clow Country in exchange for first the Star Staff, and second Tsubasa Lee's relationships at home, as he would never return. Afterward, Yuko would also be entrusted with a magic tube which Clow created and left in his will to Sakura Kinomoto and Shaoran Lee. This tube would protect the two of them from dying from the fissure in time which Tsubasa Lee's wish would later cause, and this tube would also help to allow the two to pay for time travel themselves. Potentially eons into the future, unless Clow Country is in another dimension as opposed to far in the future, the same dimension, Fujitaka reincarnated into the royal family of Clow Country. He grew up to be king where he married a reincarnated Nadeshiko and had 2 children, Toya and Tsubasa, the latter given the alias Sakura to hide her true name. He raised Tsubasa until her death date came at the hands of Fei Wong Reed as he attempted to start his plan to bring Yuko back from the brink of death by placing a death mark on Tsubasa, which was to kill her at age 14. Right before her death, her new friend Tsubasa Lee, who she knew as Shaoran for he too had a name masking his real one, made a deal with Yuko to turn back time so he could prevent Fei from placing the mark of death on Tsubasa 7 years prior. This caused a fissure through time, displacing anyone who had any connection to Tsubasa Lee. Fujitaka would no longer be king of Clow Country in the altered timeline, but instead a traveling archaeologist. His wife Nadeshiko would die. Clow Reed would travel to Clow Country to become king in Fujitaka's place, and much more has changed throughout the timeline, including changes to people's lives such as the angel Kohaku. In this timeline, Fei Wong also placed clones of Tsubasa. Here this clone is called Sakura, and Tsubasa Lee. Here this clone is called Shaoran, later transforming Sakura's memories into feathers and scattering them across dimensions so the two would travel dimensions to retrieve them all, lest Sakura die. In the altered timeline, Yuko and the Mokona, who were all contained within the shop, never lost their memory or time. Tsubasa Lee's wish, however, caused alternate versions of his parents and himself to exist, which the universe attempted to kill off. While successful in killing the parents, Yuko meanwhile protected Tsubasa Lee's placeholder existence, Kimihiro Watanuki. Yuko also placed him on a path to meet her again, later becoming a hired hand at the shop and learning its ways, thereby allowing him to carry it on after Yuko died, but most importantly, it kept him alive and safe from the universe and Fei Wong Reed. In this timeline, Yuko served many more customers and met others through dreams, such as Haruka Domiki. Meanwhile, she tracked down Fei Wong's exact location and helped guide Shaoran, Sakura, and their new traveling companions Kurogane and Fai through the dimensions until their climactic battle against Fei Wong Reed. Over the course of the journey and final battle, both Sakura and Shaoran would vanish. As man-made creations, they could not die in the traditional sense, but simply would cease to exist in all forms. But because Clow paid the price of his life and magic, and Yuko paid the price of staying in the shop and maintaining her work, the clones were allowed to reincarnate in the place of Sakura Kinomoto and Shaoran Lee in the Rebirth timeline. With her work now complete, Yuko's time began to move again. She said her final goodbye to Watanuki and granted his wish that spirits would no longer be attracted to his blood, the blood of the Lee family, Clow's blood in a sense, before dying. Yuko also cast one final spell, causing everyone except those with power to forget she ever existed. Afterward, the magic tube allowed Sakura Kinomoto and Shaoran Lee, now the clones in the Rebirth timeline, to join the group in fighting Fei Wong. They eventually defeated him, with his last words being, "The witch must be revived. That's the whole reason for my existence, and the message I must deliver to her. That is the reason I am too." His trademark monocle then crashes to the ground. Now broken, it resembled an engagement ring, as Clow potentially wished to propose before he died. With Fei Wong's defeat also came the revival of the original Clow country's livelihood. Fujitaka became king again. Now Nashiko was alive and queen/high priest, and Tsubasa and Tsubasa Lee lived on as a couple in a long-distance relationship, as the latter had to continue traveling dimensions. Meanwhile, Watanuki stayed in the shop for over 150 years, waiting for Yuko to return in any form, reincarnated or not. A few years into his role as shopkeeper, Watanuki came across Clow Reed's glasses, which Clow and Yuko stored in the shop for Watanuki to eventually inherit. These glasses were Clow and Yuko's final gift, as the glasses would protect Watanuki, presumably from magic or spiritual attacks. Occasionally, he had dreams of Yuko, where she had sent him messages in her own dreams before she died. The last known message she sent was that he had paid his price to keep the multiverse in balance, and could now leave the shop whenever he pleased. Moving on to the personalities of the two, Clow Reed was very powerful and respected. He was very powerful and respected among those who knew him, and among patrons of his work as a fortune-teller. However, he was said to have a lot of problems, as he was known to be eccentric, a creep, whimsical, and overall a four-eyed snake. Since he could see the future with 99% accuracy, aside from matters of the heart, life essentially bored him. Hence, he desired spontaneity and trickery in his life to mix things up. While we do not know the extent of how mischievous he was, he did at times pose the idea of watering down Yuko's drinks, something one does not want to do to a seasoned alcoholic. One example that is shown of his love of trickery is when he, as Eriol, secretly helped Sakura Kinomoto transform the Clow cards, by putting her into intense situations where only a specific card could help out, such as the sword to cut through magic threads used to control Shaoran Lee into attacking her. Eriol would not let even Spinny or Nakaru in on his plans, leaving them in confusion as to if he was failing in an attempt to stop Sakura Kinomoto from growing in magical power. Spinny remarked that the more fun Eriol had, the less he explained, for which he replied that he simply enjoyed the unexpected. Clow's deception was even enough to have Kuro, in the anime, wonder if Clow would show up any moment to make fun of them for thinking he was dead all those years, meaning his jokes may have many times bordered on levels of worrying those close to him. While we do not know what Yuko means when she calls Clow a creep, this could allude to his apparent obsession with the female form, given that he made all the Clow cards cute, beautiful females, with the exceptions of object and animal cards. Nonetheless, Clow was a very kind-hearted person, as he constantly helped those around him and cared deeply for all his creations and loved ones. He was also quite chivalrous, always treating guests with respect. Clow was also a highly respected chef, a trait presumably passed down through Lee blood, as Sharon Lee was a great cook too. One of Clow's most famous dishes was fondant au chocolat, a molten chocolate cake he once made for Yuko for Valentine's Day just a few months before he died. Yuko Ichihara, meanwhile, was an eccentric and pushy saleswoman who always stopped at nothing to get what she wanted. This included treasure, food, service, and especially alcohol. A drunkard, she constantly desired different drinks and even instilled this tendency upon Larg, whose own appetite was practically endless. While it is assumed she could cook and maintain a shop on her own, or at the least with Mara and Moro's help, she would take any opportunity possible to shove such work upon someone else, especially Clow and Watanuki. Despite her selfish nature, she proved to be very kind-hearted as well, desiring the growth and well-being of those she cared about most, including Watanuki, Domiki, Himawari, and Kohane. Furthermore, she was devoted to balance in the universes, similar to the Chinese yin-yang. For every wish, proper compensation must be made of equal value, no more, no less. Regarding the relationship between Clow and Yuko, their relationship is complex and mysterious. The two obviously cared for one another despite their opposition to the character flaws of one another. Clow thought Yuko drank too much, and Yuko didn't trust Clow's devious behavior. What has been made clear is Clow loved Yuko, despite never saying so to her face. While Clow spent his days in Clow country, he told Princess Sakura that no matter how grown-up one is, it's lonely to be separated from that special someone, and while he may be lonely while apart from his someone, he wished that person was happy. If Faye's monocle really was an engagement ring, perhaps Clow intended to propose, but after stopping Yuko's time, could not bear to bring up the subject due to the guilt he felt. Perhaps instead, though, Yuko and Clow acknowledged feelings for one another, but preferred to preserve their friendship or keep things professional, given their work would be integral to the future. Or perhaps they simply could not bear each other for too long, given the deviousness of one and the selfishness of the other. Perhaps the greatest insight we do have to the relationship is in Soel and Larg, The Adventures of Mokona-Modoki, where Soel and Larg tell Clow and Yuko that they really seem close. And I quote from here, Yuko tilts her head and asks, "How so?" Clow just laughs. The two never truly address their relationship. Yuko likely knows what the Mokona are getting at, but does not desire to speak of it, hence the deflection of ignorance. Meanwhile, Clow certainly knows the Mokona are onto something, but shrugs it off in his usual upbeat manner, as seen in both the Mokona book and the HOLiC Kei Drama CD. Clow is prone to laugh whenever someone says something about him that he cannot deny, though he'd like to. Perhaps both knew their chemistry, but neither could take the next step, as if in a teenage romance. But whatever the case with their relationship, the two did care for each other a lot, even if, for whatever reason, they cannot express their feelings for each other in their own time. With that is the complete history up until Cardcaptor Sakura Clear Card Arc of Clow and Yuko. For more information on the various timelines and how their lives interacted with the other series in Clamp's works, see my timeline video, link in the description. To read the Mokona-Modoki translation in its most updated English form, see the link in the description as well. And if you're interested in other crossover characters and other characters in general, see the crossover universe video link below, all of which will expand on Clamp's vast multiverse. Thank you for watching.